Hey strong people, Beck here from StartingStrongman.com, and the heats are over. We know our finalists. World's Strongest Man is in full swing. The benefits of having a newborn child, other than obviously bringing life into the world, is that they wake you up at 2 a.m. in perfect time to catch the Atlas stones being done on the other side of the world. So got to watch various people on Instagram Live, etc., going live with my 3-week-old today son. So that was fun. We were cheering on Uncle Obi. If anyone is unaware, Robert Oberst is one of my good friends, probably my best friend, and we train together. I've helped him with stuff, some coaching help. We always go back and forth. Since he got into the sport, we've been like this. Anyways, so yeah, happy about that. So, and we're gonna go down with this. I made a video previously explaining the process on the Atlas stones. You can go back in my channel and look why the Atlas stones matter more than ever. So don't need to explain that process too much on how it works, but I'm sure I will anyways. So in group 1, so day 4, depending on the group, they either did a overhead log, which was 160 kilos, which is 352 pounds for reps. I've heard it was lower, but Slater made the logs and he said it was 160 kilos, so I think 352 is what we're going to go with. They either do that or a dumbbell medley. I think the dumbbells, I'm not entirely sure at all. Like, they're doing ascending weight going up. I think they were 90, 100, 110, 120. And then I don't know if there's a fifth or not. I have to rewatch the videos, but I think that's what it was. Definitely giving people fits. It was hotter in the beginning of the day, obviously, when they started. So some of the first heats and the people that did log, it definitely looked a lot hotter than the people that did dumbbell. Especially the heat group 1, which was the first to do log. There wasn't, other than Belsack with 8, Lawrence Chalet with 7, looked great. They did really well, but I mean, Hafthor Bjornsson looked like he was going to melt in the sun. I know he didn't need to go, but he just didn't ever look stable. I think there's a problem when you go into an event and you kind of take it for granted, which I think he did in his last 2 events because he knew he was going to win the heat and go into the finals anyways. But it's a little concerning. I know he's from Iceland. It's really cold there. I think the heat, it seems like those were the 2 hottest days he competed, and he looked a little off. So going into the finals, that could be his one kryptonite, which prevents him from winning this year, is if it's really hot and it just throws his performance off. But that's yet to be seen. He looked real unstable, but he still did enough reps, 6 reps, to advance to the finals. And joining him, and then we had a stone off between Matthias Belsack and Marius Lawless. Marius Lawless had a half a point lead going into that, but that was washed clean. They went head-to-head in the stones, and Belsack handedly won that. Marius looked a little timid. It was also raining during the stones. He kind of looked like he slipped on the first one. And Belsack is in the finals with Hafthor Bjornsson. It's good redemption after the last man. He got kind of hosed in the last man standing stones last year, I believe, doing 23 reps, if you remember that, to not make it to the finals. So at least he's in. The unfortunate in this group, and pretty much every, I think I'm going to cover this real quick, actually, just hopping around like I do on the podcast. Subscribe to Strong Talk Podcast on wherever you listen to podcasts, iTunes, blah, 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 Stitcher, Spotify, etc. So the stones were made this way, where second and third go against each other to see who qualifies for the finals, to make it more exciting when it airs on television for the casual fan. It will make for a more exciting TV, but it's at the expense of the athletes. The only place that really gets high viewerships and has a big fan base that really follows it as far as it is a TV show is the UK. It's put on free TV there, which everyone gets, and that's the vast majority of who watches it. It's also aired in America, but it's like on a channel that no one has. CBS Sports, no one has it, and the athletes that ended up on the other end of this, stone deal, getting the raw end of it, getting eliminated in the sudden death, were pretty much all British athletes. It kept out. Lawrence Shaw was tied with 19 points, half a point off of second after the log. So if he placed better than Lawless and Belsack in the stones, he's going to advance. And we didn't get to see that because we didn't have the traditional stones. Bishop had a huge point lead. We're going to go, and Felix as well. Stoltman was given a good chance, and he still didn't make it. But we have no UK finalists this year, and if it was traditional stones, we'd probably have 2, if not 3. So kind of bit him in the ass for TV, because I'm sure the TV ratings are better if there's more local competitors. I'm sure last year when Eddie Hall won, they were better than they ever were. So he goes in, tough break for Laws. He looked a little slow at the start, put it on at the end. Glad to see, didn't look like he had any injuries, so that's always good. Into Heat 2, Brian Shaw, something to note, Brian Shaw put up on his YouTube a whole thing about him traveling there. I think he brought like 70 pounds of bison, and he's staying at an Airbnb, so that's why like in a lot of these photos and fan photos and videos, you don't see him because he's not at the host hotel, I believe. He's doing his own thing. It's kind of, he's been real quiet this year. I think he's just trying to win. I know he's his second kid is on the way. Just the due date's a couple weeks after. I just had mine about a month ago, and I know how nerve-wracking that whole time is. So that's either going to be a huge motivation or a distraction. Either way, from regardless of sport, from a personal standpoint, I wish him and his wife well on that. But it's just interesting to note. But he cruised into the finals pretty handedly. It looks like he did just enough on the dumbbells. He just did 2 and stopped. And Adam Dirks ends up winning the dumbbells, doing 3 in 24 seconds. Ends up just 1 point off. Maybe it was half a point. But just like he right there, almost into the stone run. And that's what I was calling to happen. It almost happened, but it didn't come true. Adam Bishop went into the stones with 22 points, with Johan Els, who looked very impressive with 19. Johan didn't do very well in the dumbbell, but is very strong in the other events and looks to be a great competitor. I just didn't know much about him going into this. I know a lot of people, when I put up my predictions, like Johan's going to do it. So y'all are right. He looks like he'll be fun to watch in the finals. He ended up beating Adam Bishop. Adam Bishop had a heavily taped bicep, and you could tell he was lifting the stones very carefully in a way to not aggravate that injury. And when it matters, if that's the difference between, if you're going head-to-head in the stones and whoever wins is who advances, that kind of, you're not going to do it that way. And it's unfortunate that he had that injury. Traditionally, if we had traditional scoring stones, he already had such a lead on Els, and there was such a tight gap. Els probably would win those stones. It just depends on who gets in between, because, man, he made those look so easy. Like, his fluidity moving between the stones wasn't the best out of the athletes, but he just picked them up. He picked them up like 2 feet, like way too high for each one. It was incredible. So he'll be someone to watch in the finals in the stone run. Definitely stealing some points there. Probably a little too inconsistent and everything else to be, in podium contention and, a little new. But, stuff like some of the events like the stone runs, he could get in between some of the favorites and decide who ends up first versus second, etc., stealing some points. But yeah, we have Brian Shaw, Johan Els in going through in Heat 2. In Heat 3, we had a four-way tie for first place with Zydrunas 2 points back after day 3. It ended up being Zydrunas was 1 point. He won the bus pole. Robert Oberst went into the day in first with Brian Benzel and Zydrunas 1 point behind him. So it was anyone's game going into the log. Clearly, we all think Big Z is going to win. We got a great showdown between the world record holder in the log, Zydrunas Savickas, the godfather of the log, the greatest strongman of all time, and Robert Oberst, the American log record holder. And it did not disappoint. I watched this on the Department of Philippines Tourism Facebook page. They live streamed it, and thank you for that. Makes me want to visit. And Zydrunas was just a little ahead. He has perfect technique. People think he strict presses, but if you watch his hips, he doesn't dip very far, but he gets a lot of drive with his hips. And he just stayed 1 rep ahead, but you could tell he was like, man, why are you making me work so hard, Obi? And Obi ended up with 7, Z with 8. Z was going for his 9th as the whistle blew, but it's not every day you get to see Zydrunas Savickas pushed in a log for reps event. So that was really fun to watch. What the unfortunate part about this is that they ended up tied. So they end up tied for first after the log with 22. The tiebreaker event was said to be, and thanks to the spreadsheet master, Mateus, it was said to be the log was going to be the deciding event. So Zydrunas won the log. He gets first place overall, advances to the finals. Robert Oberst has to do the Atlas Stones elimination, even though he has a 4.5 point lead over second. And in second, or third, third, it was a tie between Luke Stoltman and Brian Benzel with 17.5. Luke Stoltman won the log in that head-to-head. So Brian Benzel, even though he's tied, doesn't get a chance to do that. And they, Oberst and and Benzel really get hosed in that in the setup they had this year. It's not how a true sporting event should be. It's not getting the best people. The Stones are going to be an event in the finals. You want the most well-rounded strongman, not the one that was just good enough to be in the top 3, then wins the Stones. Stoltman is a beast in the Stones, so this definitely made me nervous. Texting, you try to keep your buddies calm. But yeah, I got woken up at 2 a.m. Got to watch that. It was, I think it was probably still available if you go and check this out on Instagram. Ayerer, I think, is the lady out there in the Philippines that was going on Instagram Live. Thank you for that. And man, Robert Oberst absolutely crushed the Stones. Luke Stoltman was just ahead through the first 2, and then Robert Oberst, you see him look over, and he just one motions the third and just pulls ahead. He was not going to let it happen. It was a little bit, I think Luke struggled with grip a little bit. They were a little wet. There's a new tacky brand we've been selling, Colossus, where tacky at store.startingstrongman.com. That's what Obi uses, and it looked to really help. The last stone in each series was 410 kilos, by the way, and he lifted it pretty effortlessly. This is the best he has ever looked, and Robert Oberst joined the finals. Obviously, personal attachment to that. Can't take it out. Not going to either. Happy for him. Because with Zydrunas and Oberst having a 4.5 point lead going into the Stones, they both should have advanced, and if he was kicked out, it would have been great, for Stoltman personally, but that's not how it should have went. It would have been a travesty if that's what happened. Thankfully, he pulled it out, and we have Robert Oberst and Zydrunas Savickas going into the finals in Heat 3. In Heat 4, Martins Licis wins to go to the finals. He's a favorite to go on the podium. Looked a little bit off the last 2 days. He looked like the heat kind of bugging him too, but he also won the first 3 events, so he's probably cruising a little bit. They have a couple of days off. We'll see how that goes in. And this was another tough one. So JF Caron is a little injured. He had a torn hip flexor or something on the Conan's wheel, and after the dumbbell medley, I think Mark Felix lost points on this again, but so Felix has to go. Felix ends up going against Caron. I think he had a 5-point lead going into the stones, and he was just a little off, and a beat up 80% Caron, like I talked about yesterday, ends up beating Felix to go to stones. He'd probably do better overall in the finals than Felix would, but he's not 100%. Felix deserved to be there. If it was a traditional setup, I don't think Caron is making up that big of a points difference. So really unfortunate. We would have had our oldest finalist ever in Felix, but just not how it went down. Heat 5, the group of death. Mateusz Kalkowski wins the last two events, the bus pull and the dumbbell. He was the only person that actually looked really comfortable in the dumbbell. I believe also the only to press all four. He also did that in 28 seconds, so it wasn't hard at all. He ends up winning the group, and then we had the showdown between Konstantin Janashia and Mikkel Shiva. Janashia won that stone run. It was pretty close, but he had it. He was just a step ahead the whole way, pulled it off, advances to the finals. Unfortunately, eliminates probably one of the best competitors in the contest, Mikkel Shiva. He got third at the Arnold. I think he has a little injury in his bicep. Didn't look too comfortable doing stones. I know he pretty much skipped it at the Arnold Brazil/South America because he had enough lead to win there. So yeah, I really don't like that stones. I don't think the heats were seeded 100% right. So the stones sucked, but we have our finals. To wrap it up, our finalists are, Martins Lises of the United States, Hafthor Bjornsson of Iceland, Brian Shaw of the United States, Zydrunas Savickas of Lithuania, Mateusz Kilkowski of Poland, Mateusz Belsak of Slovenia, Robert Oberst of the United States, Johan Els of South Africa, JF Caron of Canada, and Konstantin Janashia of Georgia. I'll be doing a wrap-up probably tomorrow. I'll be doing tomorrow or the next day, I'll do a look ahead at the finals, breaking down each event. That will be longer. I'm going to try to do that as a full podcast, not one of these little mini episodes. Let's see, I had a couple questions here. I'm going to try to get to them. Yeah, pretty much everything about the stones. Some of the quick things to note. The equipment, I think Rogue did a good job. As far as a live stream, we did get some of this live streamed on things. I know in my previous video, I was a little harsh on everyone talking about the live stream and how it's not supported. I want everyone to know I want a live stream more than anyone, and I was one of the 50 people watching it on Instagram at 2, 3 in the morning, holding my 3-week-old baby, trying to get him to sleep and keep the phone away. So, of course, I'd like there to be a live stream. I think, World's Strongest Man was a lot more lax with everything this year. I was contacted by a producer a couple months before the show, and they actually wanted me to come out to do some stuff. But I think they're kind of realizing that, this model doesn't work all the way. So, I've said in the past, I don't think there'll ever be a live stream, but there's things that happened this year so far in the heats that lead me to believe that they're more open to changing their current business models and adapting to the times more than I would think previously. They let, the sponsors live stream some events. I don't think they were as rough with the crowd. They realized that that's just something you can't avoid, is the crowd filming and reporting on what's going on. They live streamed some warm-ups. They put, they gave the camera, Robert Oberst went live on their Facebook page, just talking to some fans. They were using their Instagram, telling us when it's going to happen. They had some little fun stuff in their Instagram stories. So they're definitely using social media better and look to be feeling it out and embracing it. So we'll see what happens next year. The fan support in the Philippines has been great. There's been so many good videos out. Such an improvement over Botswana the last 2 years as far as the locals. There's actually a pretty decent local strongman scene out there. A little hot, but I think it was a good place to host it so far. Eddie Hall is commentating, and it's unfortunate that no UK representatives in the finals this year, but that's kind of on the people that made the rules for World's Strongest Man, because there'd be at least one if it was the other way. And Mark Felix had the best shot, like a 5-point. He'd have to get last in the Atlas Stones, and Caron get first, which I don't think was going to happen. Bishop also got pretty screwed. I think Healthy, man, he just needs to put it together one year. He looks so good. He was hanging right there with Shaw in his qualifier, but just real unfortunate. And yeah, I think that's about it. Thanks for listening. Go to store.startingstrongman.com for all your strongman needs. Hit subscribe. Go watch all the my previous videos. Even if they're just not on updates, I have over 600 videos talking about how to train for strongman, how to do different events, different podcasts. Really appreciate all the new subscribers and support. And go to startingstrongman.com for all your latest strongman news. I'm Kalle Beck. You can follow me on social media at LetKaleLift and follow at Starting Strongman.